Okay, we've now started recording. I'd just like to say thank you everyone for joining us, and to introduce the session today, I will be, sorry, this has started transcription. Sorry. Sorry. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm Eleanor Johnston. I'm the project manager for Fast Track Cities, and I'm joined today by several colleagues who have been integral to the development of the Empowerment Programme framework, who we'll be introducing soon. The purpose of today is to celebrate the launch of the tender, but also to celebrate the completion of the Empowerment Programme framework itself. And I'm joined today by a number of colleagues who have been integral to that. So Ashley, Angelina and Antonio, who will be speaking today. Thank you for joining us. Just to give some information, sorry, the number of people still joining. Just to say that obviously the session is being recorded. We will share the recording and slides following the meeting. And if you have any questions, I will give you the email address to send those questions to. So by way of background, the Empowerment Programme Framework tender actually launched last Monday. The bidding is open until Friday, the 12th of November. We're at a point now where obviously bidders can be completing their applications, and clarifying questions are open until the 3rd of November. I'll give more information about the tender at the end of the webinar, but just to say that that's sort of rough timescale we're looking at. So I'll introduce you now to Ashley. Ashley has been at the sort of helm of developing the framework. Ashley is Chief Executive of Healthy Dialogues, and she'll be talking a bit about how the framework has been developed. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you for the introduction. It's nice to see you all. I recognise some faces here. So I'm going to share my screen. And when I share my screen, everybody disappears. Let me bring you all back. Can you see that okay, everyone? Yeah.
Yes, thanks.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to be introducing the Empowerment Framework and how the Empowerment Framework was pulled together and designed. So essentially, it was designed by a community of practice. So community of practice was a group of about 18 professionals, expertise from all these organisations here. We estimated around on one of our first meetings that there was about 300 years of experience in the room. So about 300 years of experience created this this empowerment framework. Before we met in our first meeting, we were introduced or invited along to the community advisory group for Healthy London Partnership, and we got some key insights of what internalized or self-stigma is in regards to HIV and what causes it. And there's loads of information here. It was so varied, but what we came out with, it's aligned. HIV is aligned with sex, and sex is dirty. There's a lot of expectations people carry around with them on what they should be. They've had a lot of negative interactions in the past, and that colours their views of themselves. And it impacts on their sense of identity, guilt, shame, and toxic masculinity came up, misogyny, and the feeling of being othered as well. And what came out loud and strong as well, the power of language, how language can be used to put negative connotations on something or to build up people as well. So what helped, most people on this advisory group were people who had been through the journey of self-stigma, and most people were more empowered. And what they found was that meeting others, sharing their experiences, feeling that they weren't alone was really key to helping them tackle their own self-stigma or internalized stigma. Having the confidence to stand up for themselves, having that knowledge of what HIV was, and U equals U, being open to learning more, positive interactions rather than the negative interactions, being seen, heard, accepted, and being listened to. So one of the first tasks we set ourselves as a community practice was defining what we were doing, and that was addressing internalized or self-stigma. And internalized self-stigma, we defined it as absorbed negative beliefs and feelings about oneself. And then in this case, it relates to an individual's feelings of devaluation due to HIV diagnosis. And this can manifest in a person's feeling of shame, guilt, low self-esteem, feeling unlovable, and maybe linked to negative perceptions of themselves, or feeling like an outsider and likely to experience stigma or rejection. What makes a good empowerment program? One of the questions we explored as a community practice was what makes a good empowerment program, and there was loads here. It has to be holistic. It has to look at the whole person. It has to be inclusive. It includes respect, trust, safety for the individuals coming along to the program. It's transformative for the individuals, the participants of the program. And it brings in diverse experiences, but also focuses on emotional well-being and physical well-being. And it builds capacity for individuals to look after their own well-being, but also to look after those peers. We also looked at what outcomes we want, and I know this is very small writing, but some of the key things that came out here was signposting to other sources of support here. I can share these slides with everyone if you want to see them later on. Ability to talk to others about HIV and do that confidently. Help people to gain control of their own lives. Help be able to build networks to thrive. There's lots more here. Have measurable improvements about how they feel about themselves. Have knowledge of people around HIV, and be proud, knowledge about others who have HIV and are proud of sharing their status and confident to share their status, and be able to have people who come from the program and be able to talk openly and share messages around U equals U. We also explored the evidence, what the research says has worked well. So this is the evidence base. There's loads of evidence around what makes a good empowerment program, but not a huge amount around what makes a good empowerment program for HIV. But what we did is we've pulled together what there was out there. And there was 2 systematic reviews and then 2 research papers. One systematic review has been also summarised by Frontline AIDS. It's really nice, easy read. I do recommend looking at it if you see it. But what we found was social empowerment programs were key, and those empowerment programs should include a mixture of elements. So looking at health or stigma education, counselling, economic strengthening came up, so enabling people to find resources that enable them to manage their situation, skills building opportunities as well, although it didn't define what skills. Also opportunities for people to assert their rights, develop and implement their own anti-stigma interventions as well. CBT came up quite a lot, cognitive behavioural therapy as well. Some interpersonal strategies such as online interventions were in there. Open places to talk about sexuality. Motivation interviewing was a strategy that was included. Peer support was key. Another research paper looked at inquiry-based stress reduction, that is to overcome negative thoughts and beliefs. And then another paper looked at cognitive behavioural therapy to specifically look at feelings of powerlessness, anger, guilt, destructive behaviour, and experiences of stigma and uncertainty about the future. What we find in this research that doesn't work is empowerment programs that just focus on one thing. So that would be just focusing on risks, or just focusing on resilience factors alone, or just focusing on behaviours or awareness raising only. It needs to be a mixture of a program. So we pulled together the evidence, what our experience told us makes a good empowerment program, and what the advisory group told us what worked for them. And we developed an empowerment program framework. One of the key things that came out of this was that it has to be delivered by a peer supporter. You can bring other experts in, but there has to be a peer supporter threaded all the way through in the delivery of this program, or the facilitation of this program. It includes developing of a peer support network, and peer support is when people with similar experiences come together, help each other by sharing their knowledge, their experience, and offer practical help. The peer support network should feature in each other step of the empowerment program, so it should be a thread that follows the empowerment program all the way through. Another module, then, one of the key modules, is understanding what internalized or self-stigma is. So that's about educating people living with HIV about internalized stigma or self-stigma through reflection and teaching. So exploring their own beliefs, but also creating a space for self-expression and exploring identity as well. The next one is understanding what HIV is, U equals U, and how to live well with HIV. This is empowerment learning, and explores treatment choices with U equals U and how to live well. So it's looking at the whole spectrum of health and well-being. Includes mental well-being, emotional well-being, but also physical well-being. This part is also about debunking harmful myths and misconceptions around what HIV is and its treatment. The next one, building self-acceptance, self-esteem, and an individual's sense of power. This module builds on the previous modules to empower participants to challenge their own beliefs, and includes exploration of their values, their core beliefs, and their attitudes. And then the next one, and the last one, is developing skills, including self-advocacy, public advocacy, and ambassador skills. So the aim of this module is to start small, enables participants to recognise themselves as change makers in their own HIV story or their own story. And then, depending on the individuals and where they want to go, they can build up to becoming role models and change makers for their peers and others living with HIV. And it explores ways of sharing their story, advocating for themselves in their own health journey, but also advocating for others, sharing the story widely and educating others as well. Modules don't necessarily have to be in this order, but this is how we pulled it together in the framework. We also find that peer support is an important one, and this is one of the workshops, the outcomes of the workshops that we did, where we defined the competencies of peer supporter. The peer supporter role, it involves sharing experiences in a way that inspires hope, sharing information, and also it's about fostering that support network. We've outlined peer support competencies around topics within knowledge, but also peer supporter characteristics. You know, how should they be as well. And then the last thing we looked at was the evaluation. So if every good program should be able to measure how well it's doing. And so we developed an empowerment program evaluation questionnaire. We looked at previous questionnaires around stigma and HIV, and the group found that the language around that were quite negative. So we developed our own. We pulled out questions from validated questionnaires on self-esteem and mental well-being. So we included in there our questions from the Rosenberg self-esteem scale and the Warwick Edinburgh mental health well-being scale, the WIMWEBs, you might know it as. And we've got 10 questions, short and sharp, about that address all the different topics that we've covered in the empowerment program, and the idea is to take capture a person's empowerment or feelings of stigma before the program and then after the program, and ideally, if you can, 6 months post the program to see what has stuck. In addition to that, we've provided case study template for program facilitators. So this is where we can pull out we can humanize the outcomes of the programs. We could work with people who've come through the empowerment program, and they share their story in the form of a case study. This helps to promote the program and share what works really well as a result of the program. On the empowerment program, we've also developed a self-reflection template, and this is for program facilitators to think about how their own facilitation has gone, what have been the challenges, and what they can do to mitigate those challenges for the next program. That one's not for sharing, that's just for their facilitators' own personal use. And that's the empowerment program. Next, I want to introduce you guys to Angelina and Antonio, who are going to share a bit more. Thank you, guys.
So, thank you very much, Ashley. And I just want to start off by saying thank you for inviting me to present at this webinar where we're celebrating the completion of the empowerment program, as well as launching the tender. So, so thank you for asking me to come and just share my thoughts on being involved in the process. So firstly, for me, it's been a very collaborative and cohesive. And for me, it's a great example of meaningful involvement. And I say this because as a group, we all had the opportunity to feed into the process. Our thoughts and suggestions were taken on board. Any information on our varied experiences and expertise were actually incorporated into the framework. It was also quite a democratic process because although we did not always agree on everything, the process enabled us to have discussions and to reach consensus at all times. So a great true example of meaningful involvement, and none of that, the tick box tokenistic exercises that we see around all too often. And so I truly believe that this process should be replicated and shared widely. The second thing I wanted to talk about was just how I hope the framework of the delivery of the framework will mean. I mean, for me, stigma is being addressed in a dynamic way and on a range of levels because we are all coming from different points, we're all different organizations. And, hopefully we reach a point whereby individuals who are experiencing even the self-stigma can reach a point whereby they refer to it as self-love, which is so valuable. The framework has been developed collaboratively with organizations we've been doing this work for yonks. So really there's already buy-in right from the start from the organizations. And we also appreciate the fact that the organizations will then have the opportunity to bid to deliver this work. So what is also great about it and the process as well was that for once, organizations will be bidding to deliver work that they have developed, that they want to do, that they know how to do, and not the other way around, which is still sadly the norm, where organizations are bidding to deliver work that is dictated by funders. And so oftentimes they're having to adapt their programs to suit required, say, key performance indicators and objectives that the funders want, rather than what organizations know works and is needed on the ground. So just to reiterate, being involved from the start to the finish was just so refreshing and incredibly energizing. So another plus is that this program will support and better support not just people living with HIV, but also it will help organizations to identify and encourage them to look at new opportunities to work collaboratively, which can only be a good thing. And for me, last but not least, and on a very practical level, the actual sessions that we had were very well organized. So, credit and kudos to the team. We received information and reading material in advance of meetings, and we also had ample time to feed into and comment on the framework as it was being developed. During the meetings, members felt encouraged and empowered to actually contribute. Even the quiet ones who normally don't say much, they also had the opportunity to speak. And so finally, I just want to say a big thank you for involving us as individuals, also as organizations in the process. And it's really wonderful to be here today to celebrate the manual launch and the launch of the bid. Again, a really valuable and appreciated milestone because we've worked on the manual And now we get to see the resulting work actually funded in a practical way. So thank you very much.
Yes, hi, good morning. Well, good afternoon, actually, everyone. And thank you, Angelina, for that. I also echo with Angelina that it's a very happy day today, obviously being part of this, the celebration of this. And I also want to share my experiences, some of the thoughts that kind of arose for me during this kind of process at the personal level, the professional level, but also as part as a collaborative person in this piece of work. So for me, what came up for, first of all, I enjoyed very much being part of the process. I think it was a very enjoyable process where I really enjoyed being part of different professionals and different people from different organizations, bringing lots of very specific and expertise and experiences, lived experiences, personally and also professionally in delivering, addressing stigma. So for me, what highlighted this process was the importance of really collaborative work, and how this piece of work highlighted for me was the importance of actually sharing quite a lot of very important information amongst ourselves, delivering the same objective that we all want to do to the HIV community. And what I enjoyed was specifically, basically, the personal individual experiences that people were bringing into addressing internalized stigma. And as Angelina said, there were times where we were, each one of us had their own kind of beliefs around stigma, personal, but also brought in by the experience that they had in helping others in addressing self-stigma. So that kind of, for me, kind of highlighted really how these things can become either sort of barriers between collaborative work, or actually, if we look at it from a different way, they can actually become a strength, and also giving two different options, if you like, to people from looking at it from two different angles, if you like. And this shows the importance for me of kind of join really forces, really. This process, I think, in putting together this program is really kind of highlighted how joining forces together can actually bring quite a lot of information to then being translated to a very important program, which I'm 100% sure that it will enable people to give them an opportunity to change. Yeah. I wouldn't say that it's definitely this will happen, but because people, you can put them through a program, they can come out the other end. But I mean, there'll be a lot of information for people to, a lot of food for thoughts, if you like, for people, and especially being around other people, because that's the importance for people in addressing stigma. And what else I want to say? I want to say also, for me, what kind of came up as you were kind of were doing the highlighting the outcomes of the program. One things that came up for me as I was reading that, which didn't come up as we were doing the process, was how could we also address the barriers that may come up in delivering the outcomes. Barriers that could come up for people in delivering some of the outcomes of the program, in engaging in the 5 stages of which, let me just kind of read it up again. Sorry. So in developing a support network, there may be difficulty for people in that for a variety of reasons. So what can the program also do in address that for people? Understanding internalized stigma, again, there could also be some barriers that people are quite stuck in certain beliefs, and it's quite difficult to kind of move them. So all of these things, there could be barriers that we can encounter. And lastly, I just want to say, well, thank you very much for being part of this process. I really kind of enjoyed it, and and I hope that we can kind of come together again for future for other work. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Antonio and Angelina and Ashley, for your words. I'd just like to give a bit of background to the tender itself, and I'm just going to share my screen to do that. Hopefully you should be able to see that. So just to give an overview of the tender itself, which obviously launched on Monday the 11th of October. As we know through some of our speakers this afternoon, we have had 8 organisations who have been part of developing the Empowerment Programme framework itself. And the main components of that are these 5 outcomes, as we've talked about. So the purpose of this tender is to seek organisations with 6 contracts who can deliver that framework based on the programme. But these organisations have to be have to have a presence in delivering services in London. The key objectives are to empower the HIV community to tackle self-stigma through development and support, and to create a group of visible HIV community ambassadors. The timescales are as follows. So the bidding is open until the 12th of November. We are today, obviously, the 18th of October, which is our celebration and launch event. The question clarification will run until the 3rd of November, which is a Wednesday, and then the bids will close on the 12th of November. There will be a period of time, obviously, for the panel to review, evaluate and moderate those applications, bids, and interviews and presentations, we believe, will be between sort of 8th to the 15th of December provisionally. We will then be having a final approval of our selection through our formal governance before notifying the successful bidders on around the 21st of December this year, before a go live of the 17th of January in the new year. So these contracts will be in place for 1 year, and as outlined in the specification, that will be a contract of £45,000 for 1 year, with an additional £5,000 for participation in a community of practice. It's just a very brief overview. Obviously, the pack itself has a great deal of information. We hope that you have been able to access that pack through our website, the framework itself, and all the information on Contracts Finder. We just ask if you have any questions relating to any of the tender, that you would go through the formal channels. There's a clarification question template that's available through Contracts Finder, and as mentioned in the chat, there is an email address, hlp.londonftci@nhs.net, that you can send in any questions to. Obviously, that will be until the 3rd of November. Just to confirm, we will be able to send a recording and the slides that we've used today to all participants and anyone interested in finding out more information. We do advise that if you do have any questions, that you obviously get in touch, and if you would like to know anything further, then I'm happy to respond to you on the HLP email address. We've actually been running a bit ahead of schedule, so I'm happy to, I know there's an outstanding question which I can address on email. If there are any more questions, I would recommend you probably get in touch on email. But I'd just like to say thank you very much to everyone for attending the session today. It's great to have you join us to celebrate the completion of the framework. And thank you particularly to all the members of the community of practice, to Antonio, Angelina and colleagues, and also to Ashley, who has been the facilitator of all of the sessions. And each of you have worked incredibly hard to produce something that's so meaningful and cohesive, and I think the opportunity to deliver it through this tender is a really exciting opportunity for London Fast Track Cities and the wider community of HIV. So thank you everyone for joining us, and please do get in touch with any questions. We'll be in touch with more information. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.